If you look at the length of this video, you'd probably think I'm crazy to put this into separate parts. Honestly, you might be right, but this time I'm going all out to explain almost every moment that happens in this series. Wish me luck, because I'm going to need it. So the first major saga, called the Spirit Detective Saga, takes Yusuke on a journey involving 4 main events: recovering 3 artifacts of the spirit world, becoming the pupil to Genkai, fighting against the 4 saint beasts of the demon world, and saving a girl named Yukina. Let's get into a bit of an origin story so you're not so confused later on. A young boy named Yusuke Urameshi is killed when he is hit by a car when he's trying to rescue a shit kid that he told not to play in the streets. Yusuke ends up becoming a spirit and is greeted by the Grim Reaper Botan that has offered him a deal from the ruler of the spirit world, Koenma. The deal is Yusuke can come back to life if he becomes a spirit detective under Koenma's leadership. Yusuke doesn't seem interested until he notices his friends and his mother are devastated from his death. After Yusuke agrees to the deal, he has to complete one last task given to him by Koenma. He must keep a golden egg that feeds off his spirit energy to determine whether or not it will become his friend or consume him. During this trial, Yusuke messes around in his spirit form, interfering with Kuwabara, another student at his school, and Keiko, an intelligent girl that sometimes hangs around with Yusuke for some reason. One obstacle that Yusuke has to overcome during this trial is not letting his body get destroyed, because he needs it in order to come back to life. Keiko had to check on him periodically in order to keep his body safe. It was told by Yusuke in her sleep, which is one way a spirit can communicate with the living, to ensure this plan would become successful. Before you know it, Yusuke's house is burning down. Yusuke decides to throw his egg to stop the fire in order to save Keiko, and now we are in the final preparation for Yusuke's revival, getting back into his body. Koenma states that he must get a kiss by a loved one in order to return his spirit to his body. Nobody said this would be easy, as Yusuke finally convinces Keiko to smooch his face and come back to life as a spirit detective. He now has to hone his powers and work under Koenma to keep the planet safe from demons, spirits, and other dangerous apparitions that come into the human world. During the first event, Koenma commands Yusuke to retrieve 3 artifacts that were stolen from the vault in the spirit world. They were stolen by Hiei, Kurama, and Goki, 3 demons looking to use the artifacts for their own personal gain. Yusuke has very little training at this point, but does have one main weapon that becomes his signature move throughout the series, the Spirit Gun. The Spirit Gun allows Yusuke to put all of his spirit energy into the tip of his index finger and blast a wave of spirit energy at his opponent. The only downside to this move is it can only be used once per day, so Yusuke has to be somewhat witty to use a Spirit Gun at the opportune moment. Yusuke also gets help from Botan, and gives Yusuke a group of gadgets that will help him detect the location of the 3 demons. While searching in the woods, Yusuke discovers the 3 demons and is challenged by the brute strength of the group, Goki. I wonder if he will perform a raging demon. Goki transforms into his demonic form and throws Yusuke and the trees around like pieces of crumpled up paper mache. Goki is taunting Yusuke half the time and is delivering blow after blow to the defenseless spirit detective. This first battle is a demonstration of how unprepared Yusuke is to fight such powerful creatures and how much different he will become at the end of the series. It's like a 3rd grader taking on a 6th grader, if that helps explain anything at all. Goki is about to give the killing blow until lights appear in the forest, making Goki flee from the scene and leaving Yusuke unconscious. Yusuke wakes up in his home and is greeted by Botan, who recovered him from the forest. He decides to go find Goki for a rematch and is given a new Spirit World gadget that will help him concentrate and amplify his Spirit Gun. After discovering Goki, Yusuke challenges him to a rematch and the 2 begin to fight. Yusuke tries using his fist and a tree to harm Goki, but is no use to the demon's steel-like skin. This battle seems to be a repetition of the previous one until Botan arrives on the scene. She rushes over to Yusuke, and Yusuke ends up being picked up by Goki. Using what he learned from the previous battle, and this one currently, Yusuke jams a piece of wood in the demon's mouth, allowing Yusuke to use his Spirit Gun to blow Goki's head off. Now Yusuke only has to defeat Hiei and Kurama before they try anything nefarious to the human world. Yusuke was badly injured by Goki and is walking through town using a large tree limb to give him support. Suddenly, Kurama appears and passes by Yusuke to tell him he is not going to hide and actually wants a favor from Yusuke. He wants Yusuke to wait 3 days and then he will return his artifact, the Forlorn Hope, to him. Cuts to Yusuke's medical treatment.
More alcohol and I need a designated driver.
And we learn that the Forlorn Hope can grant the desire of someone during the full moon, hence why Kurama wanted Yusuke to wait. The next day, Yusuke meets up with Kurama at a hospital and reveals the true purpose of using the artifact, for saving his mother. Kurama explains that long ago he was a great fox demon that roamed the demon world seeking treasures of the highest caliber. he was in trouble and decided to hide himself in the body of a human infant to recover his spirit energy. After some time passed, he was called Suichi Minamino and decided to stay in his human form. This scene is a great way to express and develop a character, showing different sides to why a person would go to such unlawful acts to achieve a less selfish act, or should I say a more personal one. The scene is also complemented by the setting sun to further foreshadow his mother's potential death and Yusuke's choice to stop Kurama. The time is running out. Kurama's empathy to his mother persuades Yusuke to allow himself to use the forlorn hope at the cost of sacrificing his own life for Kurama to see his mother staying alive. Since the forlorn hope considered Yusuke's act to be honorable and noble, it decided to not take Yusuke's life, allowing Kurama to see his mother in a healthy state, and so we don't have to see Yusuke being dead again. Yusuke gets the artifact and now rests up to take on the final demon of the group, Hiei. After Yusuke bumps into Keiko at school, Hiei decides to capture her and take her away. Yusuke and Botan follow the spirit compass until they end up at Hiei's hideout. It turns out that the shadow sword could turn anyone into a demon and become a slave of the one who used it on them. Keiko is slowly turning into a demon, and Yusuke decides to end this once and for all. Yusuke is keeping Hiei at bay, punching him twice in the fucking face. Take that, Hiei, you stupid fuck bitch. Hiei gets frustrated and transforms into his demonic form. This form is grotesque, causing his screen to turn green like the Hulk and forming eyes all over his body. Yusuke gets trapped by Hiei and is about to get stabbed until Kurama shows up to take the blow for him. Kurama takes his blood and throws it into Hiei's eyes as a temporary distraction and allows Yusuke to begin the fight with Hiei once again. Yusuke is pushed to his limits and is running out of ideas until he sees a shining glimmer in the distance. As Hiei is going to strike, Yusuke fires off his spirit gun. Hiei dodges the attack but is soon hit in the back with the spirit gun. Yusuke shot at the forlorn hope, a mirror, and reflected the shot to hit Hiei's back. What do you know, Yusuke might actually be a genius. Keiko returns to normal and Yusuke is seen as a tactical genius by his peers, which I thought he would be, only to explain that he was just lucky and gambled on his idea to work. God damn it, Yusuke. After getting the artifacts back, Yusuke now heads to a location in the woods to become the pupil to the master known as Genkai. This is where things get a little bit tricky. There is a demon named Rando that is looking to take Genkai's power for his own and is disguised as someone else. Yusuke is sent in to stop him at all costs. Now, Genkai tells every participant that they have to go through many trials in order for her to pass down her techniques. Kuwabara is also there with Yusuke to further understand his spiritual awareness and be a goofy motherfucker, which is part of his character. The first trial had to do with spiritual awareness by turning a piece of paper into a specific color. Yusuke and Kuwabara pass and we head to the next trial. This trial is messing around at an arcade to further show the potential of someone's spirit energy. Yusuke and Kuwabara also pass this. The third trial is not as simple as it may seem. This trial is to traverse through the dark forest and make it to a large tree in under 2 hours. Yusuke is met with his first obstacle, having to fight a demon, and almost fails the trial from doing so. Kuwabara also passes if anyone gives a shit about that. The next trial has combatants fighting in complete darkness in order to see who is the strongest. Kuwabara goes first and uses his newfound ability, the Spirit Sword, to vanquish his foes, which will also become somewhat of a running gag of how Kuwabara can't fight for shit. Yusuke, on the other hand, is having a hard time fighting a foe that has a special helmet that shuts down his sight for spiritual awareness. Yusuke uses a neat trick, placing a lit cigarette from earlier into his opponent's belt so he can pinpoint their location for the spirit gun. This plan worked and allowed Yusuke to gain entrance to the final trial. This trial is just fighting each other outside in the swamp. Simple as that. Yusuke wins his battle against Swastika Man and has to fight one final battle against a boy that turns out to be Rando. Also, Kuwabara got his arm broken by Rando. The battle against Rando is rough, not animation wise, but rough for Yusuke to fight against. Rando has many different techniques at his disposal, so Yusuke has to come up with some sort of trick to get Rando without trying to kill himself. Rando is obviously kicking Yusuke's ass all around the swamp and has him tied to a tree and about to get eaten by hate fish. Yes, they are called hate fish. Even Yusuke thinks this whole situation is dumb as he descends into the pond filled with hate fish. Kuwabara uses what's left of his spirit energy to contact Yusuke and give him the strength to burst out of the water unscathed. Wow, that good old shonen magic. Yusuke uses his spirit, but for the first time, doesn't kill Rando. That's a good change of pace since he has been relying on the spirit gun too often and too frequently so far. Rando attempts to use a previous incantation on Yusuke, but it backfires and hits him instead. Rando is confused and everyone else is fucking confused about the whole situation. Yusuke pulls swamp algae from his ear, and Genkai explains that the incantation backfired because Yusuke didn't hear it. Oh, okay. Yusuke crushes Rando with the people's elbow and begins his training with Genkai. The next main event before the Yukina retrieval arc begins as Yusuke returns from a 6-month training regiment under Genkai. People have begun to turn into zombies by demon bugs and have picked a fight with Kuwabara and Yusuke. Yusuke shows off his new technique, the spirit shotgun, which is underutilized for a majority of the series, in my opinion. Botan appears and gives information on how to stop this epidemic from spreading. They have to travel to the demon world and defeat the demons who control the bugs, the 4 Saint Beasts. They find a portal to the demon world, jump in, and begin their quest to defeat the Saint Beasts before the human world becomes zombified, or slaves to the Saint Beasts. Before they enter the demon stronghold, they are greeted by Kurama and Hiei that are now working for Koenma. They explain that Koenma has sent them as a way to atone for their past crime and make sure Yusuke doesn't get himself killed. As they enter the stronghold, they get trapped underneath a massive block. Yusuke tells Hiei to go pull the switch, and Hiei seems reluctant at first to do so. In the end, Hiei doesn't betray his new companions, and they resume their journey to the Saint Beast. Whew. The first Saint Beast, named Genbu, named after the concept of the black tortoise, you know, with 4 Chinese gods, some shit like that, is a rock demon that can use the surrounding rocky environment to aid him in battle. Kurama decides to fight Genbu and give a run for his money if he has any in his pockets. These battles are a way to convey the intellect, strength, determination, and abilities that each character has in order to develop them as a refined and imperative piece of the story. Genbu is not that smart, so Kurama uses his intellect in an attempt to dismantle the beast. It seems to work until Genbu combines his dissected parts to become whole once again. Kurama does it again, but this time rearranges the parts which Yusuke and Kuwabara get a good laugh out of, and takes out a red pulsing stone from inside Genbu. Kurama whips the stone in half, and Genbu explodes into a shower of little pebbles. The next battle is between Kuwabara and the next Saint Beast, Byakko. I believe this battle is really drawn to show off how bad Kuwabara is at fighting, and how he has to overcome obstacles with his newly acquired abilities, or just trying to use the spirit sword to jab the motherfucker as many times as he can. He has to work much harder since he is not as intelligent or strong as the other 3, making it difficult for him to win battles. Kuwabara gets 2 parts to this fight. The first part has Kuwabara fighting minions and trying to hit Byakko, and the last part has Kuwabara traversing a giant lava pit in order to reach the Saint Beast. Kuwabara outsmarts Byakko in the first part somehow, which makes the group believe he is dead. Byakko ends up not being dead in the next room, and Kuwabara decides to make him dead for sure this time, I swear. Kuwabara almost ends up dying, but uses what little intellect he has to extend his spirit sword to vault himself over to Byakko and punch him into the lava. What a great way to supposedly end this battle. The next Saint Beast is an ice manipulator named Seiryu, and Hiei decides he wants to fight this guy. I want to note that before this battle even commences, Byakko shows up once again, begs for mercy, and is finally killed by Seiryu, not Kuwabara, and further proving that Kuwabara is too weak to do anything useful besides being aware of spiritual activity. This battle is short, sweet, and to the point. Hiei gets some of his limbs frozen, Seiryu gets cocky because he thinks he has the advantage, and Hiei slices his body into multiple pieces, causing him to disappear as a whirlwind, never to be seen again. This showcased Hiei's superior agility, precision, and made Kuwabara look like a bitch. This gives me the general message of humans are weak and struggle to win, while the demons can dick around and defeat their foes with ease. The last Saint Beast is the leader of the group, of course, and is named Suzaku. Who has to fight him, you ask? Well, it's Kuwabara now, just fucking kidding, it's Yusuke. As Suzaku begins to fight Yusuke, a subplot is happening that involves Keiko and Botan running around her school to avoid the enslaved people that are out to get them. Also, the reason they are after them is because Suzaku specifically told them to with his demon whistle. Now that's evil. Yusuke, for the first time in the series, is actually fighting for someone else instead of himself. Now that he is practically angry at this point, he attempts to fight the last Saint Beast with all he's got. The Saint Beast uses a technique called the Prism of 7 to multiply himself into 7 forms, each with their separate identities and bodies. Yusuke doesn't use the spirit shotgun and is dominated by the spirit beast. He gets hit with electric arrows and is tortured as he sees his girlfriend about to get killed. Yusuke remembers his training with Genkai, gets fed up with Suzaku, and explodes with spirit energy. You're probably thinking at this point, where are Yusuke's friends at and why aren't they helping him? Well, they decided to stay back and fight against a horde of creatures. Also, since the window is too high to get in, they have to figure out how to get up there. This is a way of the author saying, this is a fight for only Yusuke, and no one is allowed to come in except him. Anyways, Yusuke transfers energy to his fist and finally uses the spirit shotgun. It knocks down Suzaku, but doesn't kill him as he absorbs the spirit of his dead clones to become whole once again. Yusuke decides to use his life energy instead of spirit energy to finally destroy Suzaku once and for all. The rest of the group arrives just when this happens, and Yusuke passes out on the ground. Kuwabara uses some of his life energy to make sure Yusuke makes a full recovery. Now on to the final part, which is much different than the rest of the parts because it involves a rescue mission, allowing the previous information gained from the other arcs to be combined into this final one to see if any of the characters have learned anything at all. Koenma sends in a tape that shows a young girl named Yukina being kidnapped by wicked humans in order to turn her tears into expensive gems. Kuwabara instantly gets a crush on her and is revealed that she is the sister of Hiei. Koenma gave the tape to Botan only for Yusuke and Kuwabara to see so Hiei doesn't get involved. Shizune, Kuwabara's older sister, walks in and sees the tape since spiritual awareness runs in the family. They decide to head out towards the location and rescue Yukina from the persecution of corrupt crime lords. As Kuwabara leads the way with his thread of love, we get a great introduction into two of the villains in the series, the Toguro brothers. They are henchmen sent here to take care of Yusuke's group, known as great enemies to be feared in the spirit world and human world. There's one scene in particular that I enjoy, and involves the younger Toguro brother showing off his power and personality. Tarukane, the crime boss that has Yukina hostage, shows the Toguro brothers demons that he has caged up. He wants the younger Toguro to kill a specific monster barehanded. He doesn't want to, but goes in anyways. Tarukane says it was all a joke, but Toguro says he shouldn't have said anything at all if he didn't want to do the dirty work. He also understands that his job doesn't require him to do what he wants, and decides to power up to 30% of his main power, similar to how Frieza uses percentages as a way to gauge power, a nice callback to a previous shonen anime. The creature attacks Toguro, and he grabs its arm, saying to not blame him for what it has become, and punches the creature in half. He then apologizes for how brutal the mess is, which makes me fascinated of why an apparition, a demon, like him would apologize at all. It seems that he still has some morals for the things he does, whether they be villainous or not, further exemplifying his role as a dynamic character and one of my favorite villains in the series. Meanwhile, Yusuke's group makes it into the mansion, and Hiei ended up finding out, so he is also on his way to the mansion. Then the Triad, a group of demon mercenaries, shows up to fight. Yusuke takes care of the first member through some hilarious actions, destroys the second one with the spirit shotgun, and the last member gets taken down by a combined effort between Kuwabara and, you guessed it, Botan. Just kidding, Yusuke. After the Triad is defeated and Tarukane loses a lot of money in a bidding between members in the Black Club, Yusuke and Kuwabara have to face off against the Toguro brothers. They begin to power up, the elder Toguro showing off his ability to transform his body to any shape he wants, allowing the younger Toguro to wield him as a weapon and a shield with his brute strength. Kuwabara gets his shit kicked in, and Yusuke is destroyed by the combined effort of the two demons. They seem to be running out of ideas yet again, until Kuwabara suggests Yusuke to use a spirit gun to propel Kuwabara into the younger Togoro's abdomen to kill them off. This plan seems insane, but Yusuke is willing to try anything at this point in the fight. Kuwabara charges the large demon and gets propelled by Yusuke's spirit gun, allowing Kuwabara to thrust his spirit sword into the younger Toguro, making him fall to the ground and become dead. Hiei arrives at the scene and almost kills Tarukane before Yukina interferes. Despite being tortured and treated as a slave to Tarukane, she shows mercy to him, which shows Hiei a closer step of how to become humane instead of being a vicious demon out to kill everything that has wronged him. Kurama also shows up and checks to see if anything is okay, which it is now. Kuwabara finally meets the love of his life, and they begin to bloom from their previous non-existent love life. This ends this part of the story and the saga overall, showing off the strong points in which this anime has to offer so far. We have seen many villains have distinct personalities, diversity amongst their ranks, and devastating powers that could destroy the world. The main cast have been developing and growing to their own characters and have shown what they are truly capable of. This is a great introduction and exposition to the series, and is also a fantastic lead up to the next part in the series. Part 2, the Dark Tournament. Like every great shonen anime, the tournament arc is one of the essential moments to deliver high-octane action and surprise us with a new selection of moves, appearances, and enemies to fight. During the first saga of the story, Yusuke and his friends have fought against some of the toughest enemies in existence, ranging from a demon with many techniques to a demon duo that took the combined effort of Yusuke and Kuwabara to take down. Now, as we step forward into a new direction, we will see if Yusuke, Kuwabara, Hiei, and Kurama could defeat some of the most dangerous thugs, mercenaries, and apparitions the demon world has to offer in the new saga called the Dark Tournament. Before we head into the main attraction for tonight, there are some story elements you need to know before we finally see some exhilarating fight sequences. Yukina, Hiei's sister, that was rescued from the corrupt crime lord Toguro, returned home to the ice world, leaving Kuwabara slightly bitter and depressed to see his true love disappear into the snow. Hiei has still decided not to tell Yukina that he is her brother, and wishes to keep it this way as long as he still lives. Yusuke and Keiko go on a date since Yusuke finally caved in to her demands, and it cuts to Koenma and Botan in the spirit world. Why is this scene important, you ask? It introduces the main antagonists of the series, the Toguro brothers. What? I thought they were dead. Well, it turns out that they faked their deaths under the leadership of Saikyo, a member of the Black Club and responsible for Toguro to lose all his money, driving that man insane. Saikyo wanted to scope out the competition for the dark martial arts competition coming up, hence why he had Toguro's fake their deaths. Saikyo orders them to kill Toguro, and we transition over to Yusuke waiting for Keiko to change into her new outfit. Women, am I right? Oh god, kill me now. Then they leave the store to find people swarming around the corner of a building. They take a closer look at the scene and end up seeing the building has massive pieces removed from its structure. As Yusuke backs away from the crowd, a mysterious man shows up on a motorcycle. Yusuke asks who the man is and reveals himself to be the younger Toguro brother. Yusuke is surprised by his appearance, and Toguro shows off some of his strength by ripping Yusuke's shirt by punching the air towards him. Yusuke is visibly shaking from this, showing that the cockiness that he's known for has faded into the fear of the demon that stands before him. Toguro decides to threaten Yusuke into joining him on a trip, and Kuwabara arrives on the scene just before they leave, afraid of what might happen to his friend. The scene cuts to a building in a construction zone, having Toguro placed against the setting sun and Yusuke still trembling, even being called out by Toguro, which Yusuke replies by lying about it, as is his character to do so. Toguro decides to motivate Yusuke into becoming stronger by not only explaining that he only used 20% of his power when they last fought, but powering up to 60% and destroying the surrounding pillars with ease. Yusuke stays still for the most part, afraid of the strength that Toguro possesses. After the building collapses, Yusuke crawls out of the rubble to see Toguro standing before him. Toguro quickly moves behind Yusuke and explains that he has 2 months to get stronger for the Dark Tournament, a competition held by corrupt crime lords that will give out a prize if they win. As Toguro leaves, he notices Kurama and Hiei on top of a nearby building, explaining that they need to find another member in order to enter the tournament. Then it cuts to everyone training, having Yusuke train with Genkai and the other 3 train with each other. After 2 months of getting prepared for the Dark Tournament, Hiei, Kurama, Kuwabara, Yusuke, and a 5th mysterious member make it to the meetup for the boat ride over to the location for the Dark Tournament. As they journey over to the location, Yusuke falls into a deep sleep, and the rest of the members fight against the other contestants as a preliminary for the tournament. The result is them winning, of course, because fuck, we're not going to have our main team lose in the preliminaries, are we now? And then Botan explains to Keiko and Shizuru about the whole ordeal of why Yusuke ended up going to the Dark Tournament. Now I can explain how the tournament works. There are 16 teams consisting of 5 members, each wanting to become the strongest in the tournament. The leaders of each team decide what type of battle they want to fight, either having one-on-one battles for the most points, or until everyone is eliminated, or having a multi-person battle royale style to get it all done in one go. Also, there is a committee that determines the main rules of the tournament, and since they are corrupt, they will try to sway the rules in favor of whoever fights against Team Urameshi, so it's going to be an uphill battle for Team Urameshi. So, Team Urameshi fights against the first group of guys called Team Rokuyakai, which is a fucking weird name. It probably means something in Japanese or Chinese or fucking Lebanese. And Yusuke is still asleep. He has fallen asleep ever since the boat ride over, and he doesn't seem like he's going to wake up anytime soon, or until the plot demands he fights a strong opponent that he can actually face against. So here's a quick summary of the first 3 battles. Kurama loses to a kid that uses the 90s equivalent to a fucking fidget spinner. Kurama outwits his opponent, and Hiei destroys his opponent by using the Dragon of the Darkness Flame. Shu, the last opponent for Team Rokuyakai, steps in, and Yusuke wakes up by the faint smell of alcohol that he's giving off, probably reminding him of his deadbeat mom. They both decide to have a knife-edge deathmatch. A format decided to keep the fighters close enough to exchange punches without moving an inch, and they commence their battle. They brutally exchange blow after blow, showing Yusuke generally enjoying the skirmish, and finally being free of that sleep that was keeping him down. In their final attacks, Yusuke defeats Chu, allowing Team Urameshi to continue on to the next round. I mean, these next battles coming up aren't really that important, so I'm just going to give you a quick summary. So we have Kuwabara, Yusuke, and the Masked Fighter ending up doing a 3-on-3 with the other team called Dr. Ichigaki team. And it ends up turning out to be that the other fighters that they're facing against are actually under control by the main leader, Dr. Ichigaki, and actually don't want to fight overall. They end up defeating the group, Dr. Ichigaki gets what is coming to him, and then we get free, whatever the fuck. So the next battles get a little bit more interesting, because now that Team Urameshi has fought against 2 battles, and we see that they can do things easily, let's actually try giving them a handicap. So this time, Hiei and the Masked Fighter are actually trapped behind a barrier, leaving only Yusuke and Kurama able to fight. Because, you know, Kuwabara is actually fucking injured for once. Oh wait, that's always. Yusuke and Jin being the leader of the other team, named Team Masho, decide to do a 5-wins battle. Meaning, they have to go up to at least 5 wins in order to win. Wow! The first match pits Kurama against Gama. Gama moving on. Overwhelms Kurama, who seems to be done for, but Kurama then uses Rose Whip to kill Gama. In his second match, Kurama is still at a disadvantage, but manages to win, but had to use a death plant to save himself. Next, a fighter named Bakken steps in and takes advantage of the unconscious Kurama, beating him savagely until Risho stops him as Yusuke was about to kill him. After that, Yusuke steps in the ring, and at first is lost in Bakken's sweat fog. Yes, it's sweat fog, but Yusuke uses his spirit gun to blast away the fog and easily defeats Bakken for what he did to Kurama. Meanwhile, Ruka's barrier, the woman in which you gave the barrier, begins to wear off slowly but surely. In the next match, Yusuke is pitted against Jin. So Jin is a bit different than all the other characters beforehand. Actually, he's a lot similar to Chu, because he also has a weird fucking accent.
See, they're all pointy up and wiggling unlike they were before.
But he has the ability to fly. That's something that it's going to be hard against to fight a character like Yusuke. He can't really accurately use his spirit gun now, even if he was able to. Actually, this would be a good time to use the spirit shotgun, but I guess that's not going to happen, is it? Most of the battle, they're just fighting against each other, throwing out shit, whatever works. Yusuke can't fucking hit him because he's flying around. In a desperate attempt, Yusuke tries a new move called the Spirit Wave technique, which was passed down by Genkai. So now we know that Genkai actually taught him that technique and actually makes him win for that. Thank goodness. Even though Yusuke seems like he won, the match is called a draw because the committee determines that Yusuke was out for more than 10 seconds outside the ring, which is one of the rules. Now Kuwabara steps in and defeats one of the other members, Risho, keeping the team safe from elimination. Before the semifinals though, Yusuke's spirit egg, remember that fucking gold egg from the beginning of the series? Koema actually had a real plan for that. That was real. Like, that wasn't just a test. The spirit egg actually ended up being something. And it reveals a spirit beast that is loving and gentle, much to the rest of Team Urameshi's amusement. I mean, it's a little blue Furby, basically, and everyone fucking laughs at it because it's fucking adorable. And it's just the culmination of Yusuke's spirit energy, basically. And now we have Yusuke getting at odds with the Masked Fighter, which turns out to be Genkai. Wow, it's not like her size, stature, and costume could have pointed that out. Jesus Christ. There was a bit of a red herring, because when she revealed her face, she was actually younger, so it didn't look like Genkai. Because Genkai's an old fucking fart. So before the next battle, Yusuke decides to get all of Genkai's energy. Basically all in one. But it's going to cause him to be practically tortured for a couple episodes, where he is throbbing in pain. Literally. His whole body is just being melted and pierced by pain. As easily as I can describe it. Hiei wants to fight every fucking match, which isn't going to happen, because the other team decides to use dice to actually decide who fights who. So what basically happens during this new battle is that Hiei defeats his first opponent. Okay, he's not that hard, whatever. And then the second opponent Hiei fights just defeats him. It's okay, whatever. But this next battle that involves Kurama in it is that it's revealed that Yoko Kurama is actually a different personality from Kurama. More vicious, more vile, more demonic, of course, because that's his true demon form. And we actually get to see him battle, which is really interesting because it's a lot different from Kurama. As you'd think that he just used the Rose Whip, and the Rose Whip seems a little bit more elegant. He just uses a giant, like, death-eating plant and defeats the opponent, which is nice. Then Genkai comes back and ends up defeating another opponent. And then Team Urameshi basically goes on to the final. So we're getting closer and closer to fighting Toguro, but before that, Genkai and Toguro actually decide to fight each other outside of the ring. Finally end a grudge between the two. Because those two actually have known each other, and they give a lot of backstory about how Toguro used to be just a normal fighter before he turned into a more demonic side after him, and Genkai won the Dark Tournament. But it ends up being that Genkai just gets fucking utterly destroyed by Toguro. Like, she doesn't stand a fucking chance. And Yusuke arrives on the scene before she dies, and Genkai expels, "Oh, you gotta stop him before things happen, blah, blah, blah." The same old bullshit most other shonen anime will give you, to give Yusuke more fucking emphasis on how to fight. But it is a really more psychological role with Yusuke, because he's fucking frustrated. Of course, his master just died by the one man he hates the most. And he tried fighting against the younger Toguro brother and gets fucking wrecked. He doesn't have a chance against him right now, which loses all morale for not only him, but for the team. There's a trick to it, is that Genkai only tells Yusuke about that information. And Yusuke is the only one that knows right now. But Hiei and Kurama can deduce the situation by determining that her spirit energy are gone or where she's at. They're smart enough, but Kuwabara doesn't know. So now that we have Genkai's death, Botan, Koenma, Hiei, Kurama, they gotta encourage Yusuke to fight again. And they do. They end up training in between battles in wake of the waiting for the finals. Because the whole point of this journey in the Dark Tournament is that we are waiting to see Yusuke fight against the younger Toguro brothers. That's all we've been working up toward. That's basically all this arc is. For 40 some episodes, we want to see Yusuke beat Toguro and end up becoming the champions of the Dark Tournament. So during the finals, the first match is by a guy named Karasu, and he fights Kurama. What this guy does, he involves bombs. Okay, he just blows up shit. That's the most interesting aspect about the guy besides wearing a mask. I guess that's a pretty cool character appearance, right? So Kurama barely defeats the guy before passing out because he used a bunch of plants. The trick was that Kurama passed out for a 10 count before Karasu died. So it ends up that Team Urameshi loses. So Team Toguro gets the point, which is bullshit because the committee is corrupt, of course. Now the next battle against Hiei and Bui, which is a big buff guy who uses a large axe, is a little bit interesting to show how much more powerful Hiei is than this other guy. Bui tries to hit Hiei. It ain't working. Hiei's just catching the axe, snaps it in half. Bui tries throwing a bunch of tournament tiles, which is actually reminiscent of Dragon Ball tiles. Actually, the whole tournament's basically designed on the original Dragon Ball tournament. Bui actually takes off his armor, which is like weighted training in the tournament, when Goku took off his armor when he fought against Tien in the original Dragon Ball series. Bui thinks he has the upper hand. Alright, he's expelling energy all over the place. Hiei decides, fuck this, I'm using the Dragon of the Darkness Flame, and unleashes it on Bui. But Bui survives. Right? But the one thing that's different about this is that Hiei actually decides to attack himself. Because he doesn't have full control of the dragon, he decides to let the dragon consume him and see if he could finally gain control over it, in which he does. And Hiei just becomes badass when Bui starts punching him in the face and he just takes it. No damage. Of course, the physics of it, which of course is great animation of the punches being right, left, whatever. Bui just starts kicking the shit out of Hiei, but Hiei doesn't feel anything at all. And then he finally gets defeated by Hiei, smacked outside into the crowd. It's amazing. I love Hiei so much as a character. He's such a great character in the series that I love his personality, his actions towards other characters in the series, and how he uses his power. So now, after Kurama has shown what he was capable of, and Hiei showing more than what he was capable of, we have Kuwabara fighting, which is finally revealed to Kuwabara that Genkai is actually dead because he's too stupid to realize that's what happened. Whatever. I understand Kuwabara is just basically the comedic relief so far. That's his whole purpose. It isn't about winning battles, it's just trying to be comedic relief and being the friend to Yusuke, showing that he'll never get up, he'll fight the good fight just like Yusuke does, and try to win at it the best he can. Kuwabara fights against the elder Toguro this time. Now, this is a lot tougher match for Kuwabara. This is way stronger than the kid with the fucking yo-yos. Even Kuwabara gets tricked by the elder Toguro when he uses the trick with his body. He tricks Kuwabara into thinking that he actually killed the elder Toguro, or actually hit him at all with his sword, but he was fooled and got attacked from behind. Something special about this happens is that Kuwabara actually wins this match. Kuwabara, during this whole tournament arc, is just a jobber. That's just who he is. He barely wins. He needs the help of someone else. He needs an incident to occur that helps him win. But in this match, he actually wins. He uses something called a Spirit Fly Swatter. Yes, I'm not joking. And he defeats the elder Toguro brother. The final information about Genkai's death gave him the motivation to kill him. I was like, okay, whatever. But the final match, the whole thing we're waiting for, is Yusuke versus Toguro. Now, this match is amazing. It is greatly animated for its time. It fulfills the purpose that was given during the beginning of this arc. It ends amazingly, beautifully. Yusuke and Toguro, of course, are going to start going at it. See who has the most power, whatever. Toguro clearly has the upper hand against Yusuke. Yusuke can't do jack shit against him right now. Barely even powered up that much. And he still can't beat him. All of a sudden, Genkai decides to possess the body of a spirit animal and tells Toguro that in order to even defeat Yusuke, you have to kill someone that's close to him. Because Yusuke is always holding back. He doesn't know when to fight at his full potential. Something bad has to happen in order for him to fight at his full potential. He's always relied on it and will keep relying on until he learns to stop doing that. So what basically does is the younger Toguro goes and kills Kuwabara. Just stabs him through the chest. Okay, well, fuck, now Yusuke's fucking mad. He unleashes hell. He takes off his spirit cuffs. His spirit animal turns to a giant blue bird. And they begin the fight once again. Yusuke's actually holding his own. He's beating Toguro, throwing him across the ground, shooting a spirit gun. It's amazing. It's a great battle that I love seeing. How this villain is actually making Yusuke a better character. Not by just wanting to kill Yusuke, but just wanting him to be stronger. Wanting a worthy fight in the world instead of just meandering around fighting useless demons that aren't worth his time. So in a final act of desperation, Yusuke uses a spirit gun. A big, huge-ass spirit gun. And Togoro's just standing there. He's going to take it. He's not going to move out of the way. He's not going to do anything to stop Yusuke from releasing it. He's going to take this spirit gun head on. And he grabs it. He's holding it. He's holding it back. He's holding it back. And all of a sudden, it starts getting smaller. And smaller. And smaller. Condensing the spirit gun. He's actually controlling the spirit gun from destroying his body entirely. And he ends up dissipating the spirit gun. Which is amazing to me that Toguro even has enough strength to do that after Yusuke powered up and unleashed his full potential. It may seem that Toguro has won the battle. Toguro just starts breaking apart all of his muscle, all the built up, bulked up muscle that he had. And he ends up dying. Yusuke wins the battle, of course. And that overall Kuwabara actually faked his death in order for Yusuke to go all out. But it's really interesting is to think that did Toguro avoid Kuwabara's vitals on purpose? Team Urameshi wins the battle. Saikyo decides to destroy the arena and everything that was with him because he thought he was going to win. And the tournament ends up breaking up. Everyone leaves. Everyone's fine. It's okay. But the most important thing is in the spirit world. The most interesting part is when Toguro goes up to Koenma and asks basically to go to Limbo. In the English dub, at least. It's probably hell in the Japanese dub or else. But Toguro specifically asks to go to a place where it's suffering for bad people, that he asks for his destination to be a hell for him instead of wanting to go to heaven, instead of wanting to go to a place of grandeur, of luxury, of paradise. He wants to put himself down because he knows he's done wrong. He knows that he's a demon. He knows what he did throughout the whole series from beginning to end. What I think I believed was wrong, and then I've done something wrong and I deserve punishment for the things that I've done. Which is so much, that's an admirable quality, a noble act that even Koenma was trying to refuse. But in the end, Toguro wants this, so Koenma lets him have it. And during the walk of shames, per se, of when Toguro is going to Limbo, Genkai actually talks to him. They both converse and say, well, this is the path I have chosen, Genkai. I know what I have become, a demon, basically. I was human once, but now I am a demon. And he walks the path of shame away. And it's a very sad moment. This moment like sort of bring a tear to your eye to see Toguro go away, which you don't see about villains. Villains you usually just see as evil people or evil beings, but this guy was human once. And we always seem to forget that humans can be bad and good, and that they deserve a second chance sometimes. But even he didn't want that second chance because he knew he didn't deserve it, or he didn't think he deserved it. And that's such an admirable quality that I love in villains, and I enjoy out of villains. So before they leave the island, Genkai appears revived, even though she was just in limbo, and they end up leaving to the ferry, going on to the next arc of the story. So overall, during this tournament arc, we have a great villain, Toguro, fighting against Yusuke. Yusuke is a great protagonist, tries to help his friends, tries to fight against evil, out for his friends at any moment. And it's a great tournament arc. The battles are amazingly animated. The art is good. But overall, I really like this arc, and I'm glad this arc is available to watch and is a great picture to add to Yu Yu Hakusho. And hopefully in the next arc, I feel the same way, but we'll see.
Last time on Yu Yu Hakusho, Yusuke and his friends were invited to a very dark tournament in the middle of bumfuck nowhere to see who is really stronger than your average person of strength. Yusuke won his battles and finally got a chance to fight his eternal rival, the younger Toguro brother. He beat him with a spirit gun, and now, after getting Genkai back and leaving on a boat, we enter the new saga of the story, Chapter Black, and eventually, carrying on to the last saga of the series, The Three Kings. The beginning of this saga is a bit off to me. It has the introduction of more characters to the team that are mainly used as plot points more so than they are used for development. The premise is Yusuke gets captured by humans with special abilities, and the gang has to go to a mansion to free him from his captors. This part of the story portrays Hiei's impatience, Kurama's intelligence, and Kuwabara's comic relief, which shows either their strengths or weaknesses that we have seen in the previous sagas. When the challenge is completed, Genkai appears to the group to explain it was all an important test of perception. Genkai then explains the main cause of the influx of the new psychics, as they are called, is because someone figured out about Saikyo's plan to build a tunnel between the demon world and the human world. Koenma also appears and explains the echelon of demon hierarchy, having the younger Toguro brother only placed as a B-level demon, making the fight seem less meaningful and almost nothing in comparison later on. Thanks for that. After Koenma informs everybody on the situation, they have to figure out who is making this tunnel and put an end to it before the human world becomes an apocalyptic nightmare. Before I explain Kuwabara's importance in this saga, I will explain an earlier battle that takes place at a hospital between Yusuke and a character named Doctor. What a coincidence. Remember when I said Genkai made the challenge as a test of perception? This comes into play as the Doctor is hidden in the hospital, unleashing thousands of parasitic demonic insects to slow the group down. The team have a hard time identifying the culprit until one of the new psychics reveals him, which causes Doctor to kill the surrounding people. Yusuke and the Doctor face off in a corridor of the hospital, having it half lit with light from the outside and darkened closer to the walls for adding more suspense to the scene. Yusuke gets his resolve pushed as the Doctor wants Yusuke to kill him, and eventually Yusuke breaks down and blasts him through a window. Genkai tells Yusuke that the Doctor is still alive, and to not question what you did, because it was for the greater good. Now that Yusuke gets his confidence and resolve strengthened, we head over to the main antagonist of the series, Sensui. Sensui has another person drilling the tunnel into the demon world, but there is an obstacle they have to overcome in order to bring Sensui's vision to fruition, a giant net that keeps certain class demons from entering the human world. Who could possibly have a power to cut through this particular obstacle? Our main spunky fighter, Kuwabara. Kuwabara fights against one of Sensui's lackeys called the Sea Man. The Sea Man has the ability to manipulate water and captures not only Kuwabara but his school pals as well. In a last-ditch effort, Kuwabara unleashes a new ability called the Dimension Sword. That happens to be the one thing Sensui is looking for. Coincidence? I think not. Sensui gets wind of this incident despite Seaman being saved and eventually converted to the main group, and Sensui decides to pay the group a visit. This is where we see the true power of who Yusuke is fighting against and get a little bit of backstory to explain the sudden appearance of Koenma's old acquaintance. According to Koenma, Shinobu Sensui was a spirit detective under his tutelage and has the natural ability to see demonic apparitions. Combine this with his unrelenting hatred for demons and his strong sense of right and wrong, Sensui was the perfect candidate to keep the human world a safe place. But something very strange happened to Sensui. The mission Koenma sent him on involved trafficking of demons, having them sold to others at high prices, being beaten and tortured by humans, and, to top it all off, the involvement of the Black Club. When Sensui saw all of this, his values began to meld into a gray form of uncertainty and horror. Sensui lost his mind and killed every human that participated in this ritual of selfishness. He escaped with the Chapter Black tape, which is what the saga is named after, and now appears to fight against Yusuke's group. Sensui's fighting style is the exact opposite of Yusuke's. Yusuke likes to punch things until they give up, while Sensui methodically kicks the shit out of anything in his way.
Sensui is more so the alternative path Yusuke could have taken if he lost his goddamn mind instead of being a complacent jackass. Moving on, Yusuke gets his ass kicked in his first encounter, and Sensui's group gets away with Kuwabara. Yusuke fights against one of Sensui's minions, Sniper. Since Sniper has a long-range advantage, Yusuke has to keep his wits at all times unless he will get crushed by a moving vehicle. Hiei shows up to save Yusuke because he is interested in the chapter Black Tape and decides to whip Yusuke into shape. Hiei battles against Yusuke to test whether or not he is truly ready to fight against Sensui. After their battle is complete, Yusuke heads out with Kurama, Hiei, and Seedman to finally put an end to Sensui's schemes. Before they can do that, they have to go back outside the tunnel and bring all the members in to play some games for a shit kid. Kurama gets pinned against the kid, and Kurama figures out that if he beats the kid, he will inadvertently kill the kid. Kurama decides to accept these outcomes and destroys the kid at his own game. Kurama is fucking angry with this as the group heads to the final area to fight against Sensui. Sensui sends another one of his lackeys to fight Kurama, and it turns out to be none other than the older Toguro brother. Why is he still alive, you might be asking? The younger Toguro may have knocked him out of the tournament arena, but he was not destroyed. Sensui found him and decided to take him in to further progress Saikyo's plan of drilling a tunnel between the human and demon world. Before the elder Toguro can do anything worth caring about, Kurama places him into an eternal, hallucinogenic loop of seeing his worst fear come to life. Kuwabara gets free until he is placed into an alternate dimension with Hiei and Kurama by Sensui's most faithful friend, Suki. This leaves Sensui and Yusuke to fight out to see which spirit detective will come out on top. The most important aspects of the fight is the dialogue and Sensui himself. Sensui reveals to the viewer that there is more to him that meets the eye. About him dealing with his past, it gives him another dynamic that previously would not have been thought about: split personalities. When that fateful day occurred when Sensui lost his mind, he split the responsibility of dealing with this traumatizing event into 7 distinct personalities. During the fight, Sensui switches over to a different personality to reveal a more sinister side to his seemingly peaceful demeanor. Koenma arrives on the scene in an attempt to put an end to Sensui, but ultimately fails when Sensui reveals his final secret, sacred energy. This type of energy is very rare, and only high-class people can properly wield it. Sensui uses this to put an end to Yusuke's life, making the scene much more drastic and believing that Sensui's plan will become a reality. Since Yusuke is dead, Kuwabara, Hiei, and Kurama step up to avenge their fallen friend and follow Sensui into the demon world. Meanwhile, in the human world, the Spirit Defense Force appears to unmask a new trait Yusuke has inside of him, the recessive gene in the Mazaku. The Mazaku are legendary demons, known for being S-class in their own right. The Mazaku gene revives Yusuke and gives the impression that he's under its control, only for it to be a massive joke that fooled even Koenma. While the battle is occurring between Sensui and the others, Yusuke shows up to finally put an end to Sensui. In the final strike, Yusuke is taken over by a mysterious demon and shoots Sensui with a gigantic spirit gun that launches him across the barren wasteland. Before Sensui passes away, Yusuke declares Sensui to get up, to give him a fight that he could control and beat him fair and square. Sensui gives his final words regarding dying in the demon world to finally come at peace with his past, and Suki comes in to take him away to an alternate dimension. Yusuke is upset by this result and decides to give himself some time to think before making his final decision, whether or not to come to the demon world to discover his true origins. Sensui's battle with his own personalities was an interesting take on how a villain could seem composed, but ruptured to the point of separating the pain between multiple states of psychosis. Sensui is what Yusuke could have become if he lost his mind to the fucked up shit that occurred around him, and it shows why Yusuke is much more capable than his insane counterpart. Sensui's story is tragic, and somewhat makes you feel for the character in the end when he finally decides to let go. But the next saga isn't any of these things and involves Yusuke diving deep into his past in a new saga called The Three Kings. I don't particularly feel ecstatic about this saga as much as I did with the previous 2 sagas. It has lackluster moments that didn't leave a mark compared to what the other 2 presented. At the start of this saga, Yusuke decides to head back to the demon world after getting help from a previous spirit detective and the arrival of Raizen's followers, persuading him to meet his ancestral father. But the problem with this idea written into the story is it leaves out an important side character, and other important side characters. Kuwabara, for example, is left out of this scene, and doesn't get any time on the screen unless it's to show that he's in school or some other boring shit that doesn't really matter. It's especially sad to see Kuwabara getting the shaft after his important role in the previous part and the development of overcoming his comedic nature as a main point. At least Kurama and Hiei get to go to the demon world, but they don't actually get to fight Yusuke in the end. Oh well. Yusuke meets Raizen and finds out there is a struggle for power in the demon world. 3 S-class demons, Raizen, Yomi, and Makuro, had been fighting for years to see who would become the leader of the demon world. Since no one could agree with each other, everything halted to a standstill, and Ryzen slowly began to decay away because of his hunger strike against eating humans. Yusuke decides to stay and train while Hiei and Kurama train as well with their respective leaders, Kurama being with Yomi and Hiei being with Makuro. After months of training, Yusuke heads over to Yomi's place to offer him a decision on who becomes leader of the demon world through a tournament. Of course, we need another tournament arc. This is a shonen anime, for fuck's sake. Yomi doesn't want to do it at first, but since Kurama and some other characters from the Dark Tournament saga, including Chu, Jin, and others want to fight, he decides to go along with it. Makuro also accepts the proposal, and we head towards the tournament. This tournament seems like a cop-out to end the story as quickly as possible without hurting the main audience of the series. Tournaments are great when they are spaced out, but since this is a shonen anime, we got to have a reason to have fight scenes. Anyways, Yusuke does well in the tournament until he is paired to fight against Yomi. Yusuke loses his purpose in the middle of the battle, but recovers to show off some sweet spirit gun shots blasting at Yomi. In a final shot, Yusuke and Yomi hit each other until it is shown that Yusuke is waking up from the hospital bed, losing the fight to Yomi. Then it turns out one of Ryzen's old friends wins the tournament and decides that no demons will enter the human world. Yusuke returns to the group at the beach, and we get a happy ending for us to remember. Three Kings is arguably the weakest saga in the series and focuses more on the origins of Yusuke, Kurama, and Hiei. Kuwabara and the others get left behind to fiddle around until Yusuke finally returns, which makes it pretty sad to see these other characters that were in almost every other scene get pushed to the back burner. Yomi as a villain wasn't as compelling as the last two sagas beforehand. It relies more on personal ambitions than rescuing his world, or more so human attributes since he is a demon. I mean, he is merciless against his own son in their battle and ends up becoming better in his relationship with him. Well, what does that add to the story? Not much in reality. Did anyone really think Yusuke was going to win this tournament? It's not in Yusuke's nature to abandon his friends in the slightest, so it seemed that Togashi wanted to end the series before things got out of hand. Is Yu Yu Hakusho worth watching? Absolutely. Characters that can influence you from their perspective, villains that can rattle your moral compass, and fights that will be remembered throughout the years definitely makes Yu Yu Hakusho an instant classic and a great shonen to sit down and enjoy for yourself.